So our presentation today is going to be on climate action plan for Kalamazoo College. And I just wanted to say a few words about climate action plans. A lot of people have heard the term climate action plan. They know that possibly governments, local, state, organizations might have climate action plans. But hopefully after this discussion, people will have a better idea of why they're necessary, how they get monitored, how organizations use a feedback loop by monitoring these to make changes and tweaks. So essentially, what is a climate action plan? What is the purpose of a climate action plan? And how does the organization that creates it actually use it? And hopefully, as I said, people who listen to this presentation will just have a better idea of climate action plans in general, as well as the Kalamazoo College is climate action plans. So today, Sara Stockwood, who's the director of the Larry J. Bell Environmental Stewardship Center and the Lillian Anderson Arboretum, which I also recommend everybody go visit, and Susan Lindemann, who's the Associate Vice President for Facilities Management and Chief Sustainability Officer, along with the Kalamazoo College's Climate Action Plan Committee, will be doing a presentation today on the Kalamazoo College Climate Action Plan. Sara, if you would like to start, welcome, and please give the presentation.
Like Nikki said, I'm Sara Stockwood. I use she, her pronouns. I work at Kalamazoo College, have for about 10 years. I've been in this role for almost 5. The Environmental Stewardship Center was new in early 2019. And so I've kind of moved into working on our climate action plan with the Climate Action Plan Committee, which we have almost everybody here. I think we're missing one person. So if folks that are on the committee could quickly introduce themselves and where you work or what you're studying at K, that would be really helpful. And then we will kind of take turns on different slides throughout the presentation. So Susan, do you want to go next?
Sure. Again, I'm Susan Lindemann. I'm the Associate Vice President for Facilities Management. My team primarily takes care of the physical campus, which makes us a big part of how, and for just for simplicity, we refer to ourselves as K often. So we'll use that throughout the presentation. So how K has an impact on the larger environment, we're a big part of that. And that is why this position has historically been the Chief Sustainability Officer. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Darshana Udyangani. I teach economics at K College. So almost 7 years I have been in here. So this is my first year with our Climate Action Climate Committee.
My name is Richard Koenig. I've been on the committee. This is my 2nd year on the committee. I'm also a faculty member. I teach in the art department.
I'm Andy Brown. I'm the director of news and social media on campus, which means I'm in charge of media relations, our social media platforms, and writing news for the college's website. It's my 2nd year on the committee.
I'm a student here at K. I'm a sophomore. I'm a bio major with a concentration in environmental science, and this is my 1st year on the committee.
We are a small group that meets during the academic year, and I included some information about what our charge as a committee is, that we're responsible for maintaining the college's climate action plan, establishing goals, monitoring progress, annual reporting. We have a mixture of faculty, staff, and student representatives, and that changes a little bit year to year, but there is some consistency as well. So we'll all take turns, and we'll have time for questions at the end too.
So I'll jump in here and talk a little bit about, what is the climate action plan? there's a lot of different ways that organizations do climate action plans. You know, our city has a climate action plan, but here at K, we really began this journey shortly after a group of colleges, largely higher education, although there is some K-12, formed a group called the President's Climate Leadership Commitment. And this is university presidents and chancellors who agreed to sign on to this commitment. And the commitment, really the larger commitment, was carbon neutrality by 2050. Now, this was back in I believe that started in the maybe 2005 or 2006. And Kalamazoo College joined in 2010. And really that was a 2-year effort from 2008 to 2010 for a group that included faculty, staff, students, and trustees, setting a baseline in 2008 for the carbon footprint, and then creating what is called an implementation plan. If you're interested in learning more about the President's Climate Leadership Commitment, the website to go to is Second Nature. That is the group that administers that for all of the colleges that participate. And there are different levels of commitment, and you can really learn a lot about, you know, what each school is doing and where folks are on their journey. But for us, we started with our first 10-year plan in 2010. And the way that works as part of the commitment is there is an initial 10-year plan, which has the goal, you know, has the ultimate goal of carbon neutrality. And then after every 10 years, you write a 5-year plan, an action plan. And so what that meant for us here at K, we did get a little bit behind because of the pandemic, which I hope everybody can understand was a lot of the different challenges. And so we started to work on our plan in 2020 when we should have been, but really it took a little bit longer than we thought to get where we wanted to go. In this 5-year action plan, we, with campus input, this was surveys and you know, different focus groups, we intentionally tried to simplify the plan. Our original plan was very, very detailed. And also, as we read through it, you know, when we were thinking about how did we do for the last 10 years, we felt like there were lofty, but sort of vague goals. And so we said, let's make a very straightforward matrix that says, this is what we want to accomplish. This is how we intend to accomplish it. This is the goal. And we could use that matrix to check in on where we are at on each one of those goals. So we really got a lot of input from the campus community on that. We settled on the list of goals that will take us through, and it's 2028. Our president's staff, that would be our governing body, approved the plan in 2022. And then the last academic year for us would have been 22-23, and we spent that year kind of rolling it out to the campus so that our community would understand the goals and kind of, you know, where we're all headed. And then really one of our biggest charges in that is working out reporting. One of the biggest challenges we've had throughout the life of the climate action plan is consistent annual reporting. And part of the reason is it's hard. It's really, really hard to do. There's a lot of data from a lot of different sources. And so again, you know, going back to the basics and trying to make this more simple, we really focused on how can we make this reporting not so onerous so that it is done every year and it's consistent and you can look at it year over year and really see where we're at.
So when we're looking at our plan, Susan said we made it into a matrix. We decided on 4 large goals, and then under those goals had certain actions. So these are the 4 main goals. The top 2 are more carbon related and are really kind of focused in our facilities management. department. So reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 35% of our 2008 levels, providing leadership in resource conservation. And then because we are a place of learning, we're an educational institution, and we're a community, we felt strongly about having goals related to learning and academics, as well as environmental responsibility and campus culture. So these are the 4 main big ones, and then we're going to go through each of them in a little bit more detail. Sorry,
So,
Susan, I didn't know that these were going to,
oh, populate.
I'm just going to put them all
I-
on.
Apologize for my previous animations. So this is kind of just a high level kind of breakdown of the things that we expect to go into our this is really energy reduction, or reducing the things that contribute to the greenhouse gas emissions. And I'll just kind of go around and talk briefly about them. Starting at 10 o'clock there, retro commissioning. For those who aren't familiar, what retro commissioning is going into a building with mechanical staff and programmers, because all of our large commercial buildings are controlled by what's called the building automation system. And so what you do is you go through the building's HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, and you reset everything to make sure that everything is running exactly as efficiently as it can. And this is where you find a lot of things like a damper that was stuck open that you didn't know about. Typically, you see about a 35% reduction when you do one of these. The more often you can do them, the better. It takes a lot of resources. So usually for us, we haven't been certainly doing this on maybe the 5-year basis that you'd like to. So we're starting to get through our whole campus and really make sure our buildings are as efficient as possible. Tree plan, we want to make sure that we're being really deliberate about how we manage our urban forest. And so one of the goals of the plan is to develop a really comprehensive tree plan. What are the species? How do we want that mix to look? Where should we be planting? Where should we be giving trees more room, the hardwoods more room? A lot to do with root feeding and that sort of thing. And particularly on our campus here, where it's very oak heavy, thinking about disease and controlling disease. Oak wilt's a big problem for us here. And so that's really kind of building that plan. Building energy metering, this is exactly what it sounds like. You meter your electricity, your natural gas, your water, and then when you can figure out where your greatest demand is at, you can figure out how to work on specifically on those things in those buildings. Thermal comfort standards, this is a big one for us. We need to make sure that we as a community agree on a range of temperatures, and then we kind of stick to that range. And if just an example of this is if your office is within that range, you're not allowed to have a electric heater. And that's really just a community commitment to saying we understand that our behavior impacts the environment, and our systems are designed to meet a certain level. And so we are going to agree as a community that we'll bring a sweater in rather than turning on the electric heater. Hydrocarbon refrigerants, this is not always possible in large systems, but in small systems like dining equipment and things like that, when we can use hydrocarbon refrigerants, the emissions on that are really a lot friendlier to the environment. Transitioning off of central steam, this is probably going to be the biggest contributor to our ability to reduce our carbon footprint. Right now, the college still exists on a central steam system, the infrastructure of which was put in place around the turn of the last century. So we have 100-year-old steam pipes that we can't keep from leaking. And it's really, really a very old way of handling heating on a campus, and where a steam boiler in its best condition can maybe produce efficiency somewhere in the mid-80s. New condensing hot water boilers can have efficiencies of upwards of 98%. So the college has a long-term goal of actually pulling off of our central steam and putting in regional hot water plants. And this is a massive energy savings. And then finally, the last thing there is building envelope upgrades. And this is, again, exactly what it sounds like, where we have some single pane windows, replacing those with thermal pane windows, doing the work to really look at where sealants are needed. And a lot of that kind of goes hand in hand with retro commissioning, where you can see what your energy usage is. And over time, as that degrades, you find out why that's degrading. So those are really the things, the big hitters in energy and the, and that contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. And then also in that vein, whether we can see a direct impact from our campus to our greenhouse gas emissions, we still want to be thinking about this one very small plant with limited resources. And so what are the ways that we can do to take that burden off? So for instance, when we build new buildings, we are not putting irrigation. There are irrigation systems in place. There are some irrigation systems in place on our campus right now. Unfortunately, you can't just turn those off because the plantings were set up for that. So as we go through and build new buildings and have opportunities to look at planting beds, move more toward native plantings, foster those native plantings, then we can reduce our irrigation. We're really thinking a lot about stormwater runoff. The Arcadia Creek is just kind of on the southeast corner of our campus. I think, everybody here is probably concerned, as I am, about how the condition of the creek. And a lot of that is runoff from industrial, from parking lots. And so really thinking about how we can do retention and detention and separation to make sure that any runoff that comes off our campus and goes into the creek is clean. Eliminating single-use plastics. This is huge. And it's not as easy as we thought it might be, but we're working with our dining services provider to try to make sure that all disposables that we use can be composted with our commercial composter. And that kind of plays into the next one. The campus waste stream is really making sure that we do an analysis of our campus waste stream and make sure that it is easy for people to do the right thing. So instead of having landfill containers all over the place, but you have to hunt for a recycle bin or a compost bin, how can we make there be sorting bins around campus, and how do we make sure that we do as much as we can to reduce our landfill waste? And then finally, that last one, a lot of people ask about the helium conservation. And again, what does that have to do with anything? And really, it's just that it is a scarce resource that is a really, really important to scientific research and to healthcare, and we are running out of it. And so we have asked that our campus not use helium for decoration. We have a cryogenic chamber. We have a couple of uses for helium on campus that are scientific. And we're saying we're going to use it for the scientific purpose and not, and not blow it away in balloons. I think that's it on that screen, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to just touch on 3 or 4 things here in terms of academics. And this has to do with the learning goal, generally speaking. But we wanted to increase the number of permanent course offerings that address climate change. I like to say that this refers to classes listed in the course catalog, but we want many classes within most areas, if possible, to take on the subject by embedding relevant modules of study and/or via creative assignments of some type. The second part is we want to enhance the structure, support, and encouragement for SIPs about climate change and sustainability. Again, we may rely on the environmental studies program here to house these SIPs, but I think it's a great opportunity for professors such as myself in a different field. I'm in art, for example. Darshana's in economics. I think it's a great opportunity for us to conduct non-departmental SIPs that can address these issues of climate change. And lastly, I just wanted to say that we want to enhance student opportunities for experiential education focused on climate change. And we have 3 areas and 3 experts they can students can talk to about it. We have one here, Sara Stockwood at the Environmental Stewardship Center. We have Benny Girdler in Environmental Studies program. She's a biology prof. And we have Allison Geis for civic engagement. These are people that we encourage our students to talk to. I've been sort of, when I can, work on this toolkit for faculty to try to gather up resources that we're going to share with faculty. So we're working on that right now. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. We have a new member this term is Darshana in the economics department. I'm going to hand it over to her. She's done some really amazing things already, landed with her feet running. For instance, she had her class hold discussions that the whole campus were invited to. So I think I'm going to hand it over to Darshana.
Thanks, Richard. So this course that I'm teaching this time, it's a senior seminar course, Economics of Climate Change. So when we designed this course, we had actually 3 objectives to cover environmental responsibility and learning. So my first objective was to discuss our economic theory and the models with the students to get an idea about climate change impacts and the economics, the intersection. And the second major objective was to step out of the classroom rather than being inside the classroom, talking about the theory and the knowledge that we could share. We wanted to step out of the classroom to get to the community, to the students, to the faculty, to the staff, to talk about our actions and our delays, maybe inactions towards meeting climate change goals. That's where we organize these community events Richard talked about. We organized 2 events, one focused on students, one focused on faculty and staff, to talk about their responsibility and also the initiatives we have from the government, from the state, even from the school to get involved with our action. And the third objective is to bring in some climate leaders from our own community. So as a result of that, we were able to bring Carol Higgins to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act. And then actually in about like 1 hour, we have another guest speaker from our own community, Bruce Benton, to talk about his efforts on expanding EV infrastructure in Ocas Island in Washington. So hopefully we could use his expertise, his experience in relating to expand our EV infrastructure, or at least the EV charging stations at K College. So that's our focus in meeting these 3 goals. So we have about 12 students, very excited 12 students who got involved with all the objectives that in meeting our class goals. Thank you. Sarah?
I'm sorry. Let me jump back in there. I see in the chat that someone said, "What's a SIP?" And it's such a K College thing to talk in these acronyms. But a SIP is a senior individualized project or a senior integrated project. We're calling it now. So it's a capstone project that seniors work on that hopefully is capstone in effect, bringing a lot of their skills together and building something significant. One other thing I wanted to add was that the faculty, there's a global teach-in that happens every year. That'll be coming up in the spring. And last year we had really good turnout with many faculty members turning over at least part of one class to address this topic. So we're gonna try to build that up and keep that going as well. So sorry about that. I'll hand it back over.
So I am here to talk about campus culture and environmental responsibility and how we can all contribute. So I think that an important part for pursuing, the climate action plan is that we need an interconnected web of support, individual groups or individuals working in isolation. So I think like having the support and the coordination is really vital for trying to get a greener community. So some of the ways that there are different groups around campus so that people can get involved is student organizations and campus events. That's like Eco Club, things like that. Orientation and Life at K. Part of orientation is that first years, they have different events that they can go to. And the ESC actually does a few tours of green spaces as part of orientation. We also do connecting with Kalamazoo, WMU, KVCC, dining, which is food waste, composting, disposable tableware, local sourcing, and then also working with offices and departments beyond academics. I know that in my personal experience working with the ESC, that I work with a lot of different people. I work with like hoop house interns, composting interns, but also like departments as a whole, like biology or dining. So it's really important to have constant communication between all these different groups. For example, we recently have these climate action interns, which I think are really important for addressing the different needs that people have on campus. So all the interns are sort of coordinated with the ESC, the Environmental Stewardship Center, but they also work in specific departments so that they can make sure that those departments are having their sustainability needs met. Yeah, and Sarah, would you like to talk about the composting?
Sure. I saw that there was a question about composting in the chat. So as a small school and small staff, small committee, we really rely on students either in paid positions or clubs or in doing summer research to really help advance certain things. And so for a long time, we've had an on-campus composting program that there's been different versions, but they were taking food waste from the dining hall, composting it in a little wooded area on campus, and then we're using the compost in garden spaces when it's complete. And we had a student several years ago complete a summer fellowship through the Environmental Stewardship Center and then paired with facilities on what are we missing and what is still going to the landfill, right? We can't do meat, we can't do dairy on site like that, and really looked at what would it look like if we brought in an industrial composter, and what would it take for us to actually compost everything on site, and did a lot of different calculations. It was a pretty in-depth project, and that helped us inform the decision to hire My Green Michigan, who will take currently takes our food waste from the cafeteria, while our on-campus composting focuses on more of the veggie fruit type scraps from offices and like student households, things like that, as a educational and also helping us process some of our food waste. So that's just one example of how we sometimes are creative in how we're making our decisions, but also are really involving students in the process.
I would just like to end my part by saying that like community is probably the best way forward to tackling climate change, and we really need to prioritize communication and care.
One of the last things that we had planned we wanted to talk about is these connections across campus. We are a very small committee, like we've mentioned. We're all here, and our climate action plan really has to connect with everybody. And one of the things that is in the works right now is our next strategic plan for the college. and I think it's called Advancing K 2.0. And the climate action plan is all of the items are embedded within the college's strategic plan, which feels really big for us. You know, our president's staff has agreed and committed to the plan, and this is another way that we're you know, going to make sure that all the pieces happen, hopefully. So I think that's really great. And we also want to talk about the reporting and what that process has looked like, what we hope it looks like in the future.
So the carbon reporting piece, the you know, the platform that we use as kind of our accountability piece is, as I mentioned before, the president's climate leadership commitment, and that group has partnered with the University of New Hampshire. They have a tool called SciMap, and that is basically makes it possible for institutions to input some basic data, and that will do the carbon calculations for you. And the great thing about that then is that we're all consistent about how we're doing the calculations. So there are some regional factors, but largely we put our numbers into this website, and then they're immediately reported to the Second Nature and to the group that's doing the commitment. But one of the challenges with that is that, you know, you have to go to this website that isn't part of our website, and it doesn't really distill it down into something that our community can engage with and talk about very easily. And so we're really trying to streamline this process, number one, so that carbon reporting gets done more quickly. And that gives us time to develop a summary report, which also talks about all the other goals that we shared with you today. So not just our carbon footprint, but we have resource conservation goals and academic goals and learning goals and community goals. And we all have all these in a matrix, and we want to check in with our community once a year to see where we're at with that. So a big part of our 5-year action plan was to streamline that process, to make it more accessible to people. And then the other thing is just this communication. You know, I completely agree with Mia that this is all about community. And we're very fragmented. We just don't have the size to have a department committed to this. So we're all doing different things, and we're trying to encourage everybody to let us know what they're doing and to share it so that we have synergies across campus. So you can see down at the bottom there, we are trying to highlight some stories about things that we've done on our website, and just make sure that people know what's going on, and that we invite everybody across campus to share with us what they're doing. Individual departments, academic departments, students, a lot of people are doing a lot of things, and it's encouraging to know what those things are, and you can see who to connect with if you're interested in a certain thing. So those are really some things that are important to us going forward that may have been lacking from our programs previously.
And those screenshots from the website are on sustainability.kzoo.edu. And that's where the climate action plan is too. You can read it, see the full matrix. We also just want to include an email. This is a general email for environmental stewardship that would get to us, and 2 social media. One is the department, and one is the student group that Mia was talking about. And I think that's it for our formal presentation, and we'd be happy to take some questions.
Steve, you're the first on the list.
I've got 6 questions. How many can I ask, Nikki?
6. Just do it one at a time.
Yeah, so the first one is really easy. How often does this committee that's on the screen meet?
Every other week during the academic year, and then Susan and I meet every other week as well throughout the summer.
Great, thanks. And I guess this is a question maybe directed at Susan. I'm trying to figure out, this is being recorded, so I'm trying to figure out how to be as diplomatic as Jeff Schoolstra when I ask this question. So I come from an institution that shall not be named, where the people in your position, Susan, are not quite as interested in engaging as you appear to be. And I guess I'd like to hear what kind of pushback there has been for this kind of planning on your campus. Where, did someone have to twist your arm? Was this something that, just is obvious to you, or more kind of a personal thing? Among other things, I'm trying to understand how to approach getting the buy-in that's absolutely essential for the stuff that you've so clearly and beautifully laid out.
Well, that's a great question, and I want to give some maybe kudos to my predecessor. The person that was in this role before me started his career as an energy manager, so he was very interested in energy and also very, very committed to the climate. And some of you may know Paul from sitting on the Nature Center board and other things that he's involved with in town. And he's the one that really said, this is important. My department has the biggest impact on it. I'm going to act. And he really drove that change. But what was good about that was that then sort of wrote those things into the job description. And so when they were looking for a new person to fill that role when Paul retired, that was prominent, and it was one of the things that excited me about the role. And so I think I think that's what a lot of people who may have showed interest, if that didn't interest you, you shouldn't have applied for the job, right? And so in some ways, yes, you're right. It's a personal interest in this, certainly, but I think kind of building that into the structure had a lot to do with finding somebody for this role that did care. Does that answer the question maybe a little bit at least?
Yeah, I mean, it's yes, but I mean, it's kind of an open-ended question, of course. Wondering, has there been universal acceptance? Is there any pushback at all from any aspect of the college at this point?
I think if there's financial struggles everywhere right now in colleges and universities, enrollment is dipping quite a bit. And these are cycles that we see in this country. And then also, we were one of the few, at least local institutions, who during the pandemic, it was really, really important to make sure that our employees stayed whole. So where there might have been other institutions that were laying people off and making reductions to try to make their budgets work, our institution said it's really important that we keep our employees whole. There were some things that we did, but largely everybody, my staff, even facility staff, custodians, went home for a period of about 6 weeks and got their whole paycheck, right? And as wonderful of a thing as that is, that really stressed the finances of the college even out until today. So the pushback that we get is about scarce resources. And a lot of these good and wonderful things have big first costs or, are challenging. And I actually feel, myself, the energy projects that our president is extremely supportive and gets me the resources that I need to do those things. The things that can be a little harder, if I'm being completely honest, are the things that are way more separate. So like the single-use plastics, it's really hard to get departments to stop using those darn Keurigs, which I know that Keurigs aren't like killing the world, but it's just, to me, it's indicative of the way you feel about your role in this. So I really feel like we have a lot harder time with the little things that are spread out than the big things. I feel like the big energy things, I have support.
Great, thanks so much for your candor. I appreciate it. And I'll pass the baton on, but I'll be back.
Susan, you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Nikki. And thanks to all of you on the committee. This is so impressive that you're doing so much, that you're getting that essential greenhouse gas inventory done. I had a question in that regard that also relates to some of the other things you're doing. I'm with Western, and Western and my last institution were both part of ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Ed, and they have a STARS program that helps with doing the greenhouse gas inventory. And I'm curious about why you ended up with this president's climate group instead. And are you a part of ASHE, K College? And they've got a lot of active give and take with what other institutions are doing, a lot of information sharing and resources. And is that helpful at all? And thanks again for all that you're doing.
Thanks. I'll take that one since I kind of handle the carbon reporting. Really, it comes down to the wanting to be consistent in the way that we report. And the president's, I'm not sure when STARS came out, and I wasn't with the college, obviously, in 2010 when they signed the commitment. But that was really about the president's climate commitment was always the thing that like the platform that we used to both build our implementation plan and to do our reporting, and that is connected to SciMap. SciMap and STARS are very, very similar, and about maybe it was 3 years ago, I had a student do a summer internship to look at, should we be using STARS in addition, in replacement? And the conclusion that she came to was that the conversion between the two, at least at that time, was very time consuming. And it didn't get us anything, it didn't get us any further on the road. And we had to do SciMap because of the president's climate commitment, because it ties right in. So her thought was our resources and time would be better spent working on reducing, on reduction projects and not on reporting.
That certainly makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
And we are members with ASHE.
Okay, Tim, you're next.
Obviously, you understand that climate change is a global issue. And so I'm wondering what efforts you make to influence what's happening outside the college. So one example would be, the Michigan Public Service Commission regulates our public utilities. They set standards for what the utilities are supposed to be doing. Another would be our legislature just passed a package of bills relating to energy. Does K College make any effort to influence any of these activities?
Sorry, I don't have any information on that, I'm afraid.
I mean, I guess maybe I could throw in, being part of Second Nature and ASHE. There was last year there was a petition that came out of Second Nature where there were some demands that were being sent to the federal level. And so they send around this request. I take it to our president's staff. I say, may we sign this, right? I was given permission to do that. And then that goes forward, as a group from Second Nature. In some ways, we're so small that it's difficult for us to make a difference at a government level without joining together with other institutions to do that. And so while there isn't anything specific that we do on our own to try to push, I feel like, you know, we try to use our partners in our community to make a difference. And you know, I have to say, to go to your president's staff and say, we want to put our name on this, you know, that puts us out there as an institution. And I was pleased that the administration was willing to let me do that.
I have a follow-up on that question. Second nature would be federal. What about state? Is there any way that you can support state bills or state legislation?
One of the other groups that we're part of is Michigan Independent Colleges and Universities. And that is how that group is certainly who works for resources for Michigan Independent and colleges and universities. And so that's really our conduit to the state legislature.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, you're next.
Thanks, Nikki. Hi, K team. It's great to see you all. Western's going to be launching into our next version of climate action planning in the months ahead. It'll be a 2 or 3 year process. So we're absorbing lots of things now. This is a great presentation and very timely for us. Secondly, Susan, when I look at higher ed institutions that have steam lines, and I ask the question, who's moving away from steam lines and how quickly are they moving away? What I see is campus electrification as a concept. We're going to electrify everything. And I see low temperature hot water as a solution to use old steam lines for central heating and whatnot. Is that the concept that you're pursuing, electrification, low temperature hot water, or is it somewhat different than that? Or could you describe that in a little more detail?
Yeah, so right now we have a boiler plant, and geographically and figuratively, it's at the bottom of the hill, right? So we have this large hill. And so, I mean, I don't think you have to think about it for very long to realize what a bad idea it is in 2023 to do this, right? But so we have these huge steam boilers, and they have to heat water, you know, between 240 to 260 degrees to push it up a hill, to then bring it back down to, on a day like today, maybe 135, 140. And it's not linear. The cost to heat water is not linear. As you get into that point where you're creating pressure with the steam, you are really eating a lot of energy, and it just doesn't, like, at a very basic level, doesn't make any sense. So the other thing with steam is that it's so much less of a closed loop. In order for it to work safely, you have to have steam traps all around your system. And what these do essentially is just let energy off into the atmosphere. Not to mention all the chemicals you have to use in the water, in the steam, to keep it from corroding the lines, right? So if you can, what I'm not doing a central hot water plant. I'm actually working toward regional, or more often, like at a local building level, low water temperature. And then when you do low water temperature, and I'm sorry to get into the weeds here if this wasn't your intention, but when you do low water temperature, you have the lower the water temperature that you're returning to your boiler, then you can do that second phase condensate. And so you're basically you're preheating the air that's going across your heat exchanger with your exhaust. So a big change in efficiency. And so really what this is there's this old dilapidated steam system with holes everywhere. And it just doesn't make any sense to try to renew that. What makes sense is to go to the point where you need the energy and create the energy, create the thermal energy, and use so much less either gas or electric. You know, on the domestic side, typically we're using electric. At this point, we're still using a lot of natural gas on the heating side. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Steve again.
I'm kind of curious. Again, this is sort of more the logistics of setting the stage. who actually on campus drove your joining the president's climate commitment? Was that Paul Manstrom? Or I mean, I guess you had a different president at the time. Was it the president herself? How, you know, who was driving that bus?
Not sure if there's someone on the committee that's been here longer than I have. I joined in 2018, so I've always had the impression that Paul had a big hand in that. But I think that there were others on the faculty, and I'll look to my colleagues if anyone has more information about it than I do.
Yeah, that's before I was around, certainly.
Yeah, our one of our previous faculty members on this committee was part of the original group that wrote the first one. She's on sabbatical. But we can ask her. I'm not sure where the driving force came from, because that was a couple of years before I started as well.
Okay. Just curious. Also curious how you constituted this committee. Did you put out a call for anyone who was interested, or were you looking for specific skills or experience?
Well, I'll kind of talk about that a little bit. So my position and Sarah's position are so kind of intertwined with this. We have like a standing seat on the committee, and we sort of share administering the committee. On the faculty side, the faculty executive committee actually assigns a person, and Richard or Darshana could maybe talk more about how that's done. And then, everyone else is kind of selected for a combination, I think, of interest and what their particular talent is that can help advance the cause. And so we try to have somebody from every area. We have someone, one of the people that couldn't be here today, Jess, is part of our student development outdoor programs group. So just trying to make sure that we have a good cross section. And I don't know if Richard, you could talk about the faculty selection piece.
Yeah, I mean, faculty development does it. We faculty every year are asked to put in for their choice of committees, and you can list 3 of them with your favorite on top. And then it's up to the faculty executive committee to sort of suss that out and spread people around where they're needed. I can't remember how I got on. Oh, after 3 years, a faculty member goes off and takes a year off of committee service, then they're back on for 3 more years. So I was off for a year near one of my sabbaticals, or my last sabbatical, and I think I was just put on this out of the blue. I don't think I requested it or anything of that nature. So, but I can't really remember. I'm curious, Darshana might be able to shed some light, because it used to be just one faculty member on, and then they added a second with Darshana joining me. So
yeah, last year, did we have only you, Richard?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this year I requested to be on the committee too. So that's probably why they put me on the committee.
And I report to the provost as well, and had put in a request that we have 2 faculty members if possible, instead of 1.
I think partially that has to do with continuity, and we were having short terms with faculty members, and so it really makes a lot of sense to have some overlap, so that you always have that thread. Since Sarah and I, our positions are always there, we have that continuity, but we wanted to make sure that the faculty had that continuity as well.
Susan?
Thank you. Just a quick question. Have you been able to show significant financial savings from some of these changes? Thank you.
Yeah, whenever we see the energy, the scope 1 go down, we see that if reflected in our energy bills. And the other nice thing is that consumers' energy, I'm not I'm not going to speak to what drives this, but they do have a group of people that are very interested in helping us make changes that then lead to rebates. And so a lot of times, you know, I have a very, very small staff, and it would be really hard for me to do all those applications. And the Consumers Energy staff actually help me do those rebate applications. So we're able to see good, you know, good financial returns from them. Yes.
Oh, that's great.
That's nice to hear for other institutions then also. Jeff, your question.
Thanks again. It's 1 o'clock. Appreciate you're here right up to the last minute, or if we're staying a little later, that's awesome. Keep Western in mind and offices like mine when we talk about regional opportunities. Could we get an industrial composter close to our campuses? Can we coordinate the transportation corridor that might lead from our colleges downtown into the new arena area? Can we talk about the busing system and make it better? Can, you know, one after the other, like, let's work together because of the city's work on this stuff, and the county's writing a climate action plan and with climate justice elements, and that's a brand new effort that's going to be an interesting development. Please keep this in mind. Again, I appreciate all your time today.
And just another hat I wear for funsies is Downtown Development Authority and Downtown Economic Growth Authority. And so, yes, we should definitely collaborate on that, because there's opportunities at this very moment. And I'm thinking particularly about the creek too. I worry about the creek, and there's opportunities to do the right thing or do the wrong thing. So let's try to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Steve?
So I was really intrigued by the piece that Mia talked about of communication, and you know, the little vignettes, the little stories. Really great idea. Who writes those stories? Andy, do you write those stories, or you know, and do you get to decide that you write the stories for this climate action plan, or that, you know, how does that work? And you know, what am I asking? You know, it just seems like it's so hard to get people to write things that don't have directly to do with their work. So
Sure. Well, I get a lot of creative freedom in my job. And last year, my boss came to me and said, Susan and Susan and Sarah wanted to have a communication representative on the plan committee. I volunteered to do that. And as a result, I can think in terms of news with our sustainability work. So for example, if a student has an interesting senior integrated project related to environmentalism or sustainability, I get to write about that, and I can present it on our website and social media accounts. So it doesn't take a lot of cutting of red tape for me to be able to put something online like that.
And did you take this role willingly? You know,
Yeah.
again, is it a personal? Are we relying on people's personal points of view?
Well, for me, it had to do with time flexibilities, one. Two, I've worked with Susan and Sarah before, and I've enjoyed it. So I decided to seek that out more. And environmentalism is an interest to me, yes.
Do you get feedback on the articles that are written?
Often, yes. Now, most of the time, that's extremely positive because we present K in a very good light. If there was something negative to present, we might have a different opinion there.
And those are generally like college-wide that go on the main homepage that Andy writes. We definitely lean on Andy a lot for like what might make a good story. The screenshots that we showed on a previous slide, those are on our sustainability site. So, and those are more like blog form updates. And I think all of those that were listed were written by Emerson, who was our intern last year, kind of in Mia's role, and is currently on study abroad. So she had an interest and would kind of talk to Susan to get some specific information about maybe like our stormwater retention project at a certain building, and then would write it up, get it approved by Susan before posting. We have talked about trying to gather a couple more students to have a little bit more breadth of the type of stories, and we are still working on that.
If you're interested in seeing an example of something that I do, I'm going to put a link in the chat right now. This is a story I wrote about a student named Lauren Crossman last year, who actually cold called downtown businesses and asked them, hey, can I help you get an environmental plan going? And she came up with a lot of ideas for them, despite some varied levels of reception. And she turned it into her SIP. She, I believe 22 downtown businesses responded to her. And she turned it into a presentation at the Green Drinks event downtown. And she had the mayor attend, and a lot of influential people who have now taken this to the city level to think about how they can integrate her ideas into a larger spectrum.
Okay, Jeff, how about you be the last question? Because we are out of time.
It's technical. Is Kay investigating, planning to buy, or already buying greener energy, greener electricity from consumers? Or is that on the table, or is that maybe something to investigate?
So yeah, that was mine. So in fact, I was just looking, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a card that came out, and they're trying to make it easier for people to buy. And it's not energy credits. It's sort of a different idea about them developing new renewable energy and buying into it. One of the challenges so the short answer is yes. And it's been kind of hard to do. The Nature Center was trying to get a group of local organizations together to do some solar, and we were very interested in those conversations, and then that sort of didn't lead anywhere. And so I think so yes, it's always on the table, and I want to be really careful that we're not buying our way out of bad behavior. That's my concern. And so I think it is good. We're too small of a campus to do a lot with our geography. And at some level, if we want to reach carbon neutrality, we're going to have to rely on some of these programs where the energy isn't actually created on our campus because we're just too small and too dense. But I want to make sure that the way that we do that isn't trying to buy our way out of doing the right thing on our campus. And maybe that's just my personal philosophy. And but I feel like we need to reduce our waste, curtail our behavior, and then where we can't make up the difference, look to the outside to do that.
Very good. Okay. We're past our normal time, so that's why I cut it off early, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think it opened up a lot of questions, and so that means that there was actual interest in what you were saying also. So I appreciate you doing this.